our Tithely University webinar. We're very, very excited to have all of you guys here for the very first one. Let's go ahead and go over to the next slide. I'll do some introductions of everybody. So today we have a couple of people joining, you can tell. Me and Sharon, we're gonna be the hosts of the Tithely University webinars. So we'll be doing this every single month. You guys will get very used to our faces. Hopefully that's a good thing. I'm the customer support manager here, and Sharon is our customer success manager. We both are so passionate about what Tithely has to offer. We love our teams, we love what we do. So we're really excited to share that passion with all of you guys today. Then we have our fantastic teacher. Her name is Sabrina Sherman. I get blessed to have her on my department. She's one of our customer support reps, and she specializes in our CHMS product specifically. So she has a lot of really wonderful product knowledge. She'll actually be teaching almost the whole big brunt of today's information. And then we have Lachlan, who is also one of our support reps here at Tithely. He's going to be monitoring our chat. He's going to be looking through all the questions that you guys have, and he'll also help offer any other insight as needed. You can see he's off video right now, but he may jump on if at any point we need him. But he'll be monitoring all of those great questions kind of throughout the whole webinar today.
Awesome. So the next slide, this is actually something we don't want to spend too much time on this because we know kids check-in is beefy, so we're going to move on past that. But just so you guys all know, Tithely is really wanting to be everything that you need from a technical standpoint. So we're actually launching, we're going to give you an inside scoop, we're going to be launching websites to be able to do that. We're going to be launching messaging. And so as you can see, this is a graphic showing all the areas of your church that we want to be able to serve and support you in. Just to even touch on events real quick, which we'll happily do at Tithely University on this one day, this is actually included in your Tithely account completely for free, so you don't even have to use Eventbrite or other things that you might use to host events. So, you know, this is definitely a more teaching webinar, so I don't want to land on this too long, but our heart really is to serve you and to help you and to have growing and healthy and prosperous churches that can do great things in the kingdom. And so this is, we're pretty much almost there in all these regards. And if you don't have any of these services and want to know more, please reach out to us. But we do really want this to be a blessing to you and to be able to do things in your community. So we just wanted to touch on this quickly before we dive in, but we're going to actually have Sabrina take it away. Like I said, we're doing kids check-in first, and you guys probably all know why, because it is a big topic and questions do arise about it a lot. So as Addie mentioned, as Sabrina starts teaching, please use the question portion of this and start asking questions. Addie, and especially Lachlan will be monitoring that. So we want to make sure that as things come up and they're not clear, just totally ask away. So the amazing Sabrina is going to jump in.
All right, can you guys hear me okay? We're all good?
Yep. That's
all
great.
Right. So this first slide is just to give you kind of an overview of what the big topics are that we're going to hit on for this feature of check-in that we have in our CHMS platform. So you can kind of take a look at some of those big things. If there's something you're waiting to hear about and it's there, you can rest assured it's coming. And if not, definitely be asking those questions throughout. So I want to go ahead and I want to let you know that I'm going to be going back and forth between the slides here. And also for you visual people, I want to go to the actual platform and show you what our check-in actually looks like for volunteers and for self-check-in. So before I do that though, let me just tell you a little bit about it. This first chunk is really just about using check-in. How do you get to the area in CHMS for those of you that have it already, who can be checked in, and volunteer assisted check-in versus self-check-in? What's the difference? What does that all entail? So the first thing I want to talk about is who can be checked in. There's 3 different modes of check-in. One that is the primary use is going to be for our children, and that's useful for kids ministry, obviously, and really safely checking in and out our kids, making sure that our kids are leaving with the same people that they were checked in with. Volunteers is another mode of check-in that you can use. This could be for if you have all your rosters complete with all your volunteers you're expecting that day to show up, you can set up a little kiosk for self-check-in for volunteers to make sure that they've all arrived, and you can check on the status of that, who's missing and whatnot. The last one is not really what it sounds like. There's an all people mode where you can search the entire database. This isn't to say that this is what you should be using for your attendance or anything. There's actually a separate feature on our service plan for reporting that's a whole lot more useful to like mass add people. But this is really useful if someone's not showing up in the children or the volunteer filter, maybe because someone hasn't been marked as a child in the profile, or they haven't been marked as a volunteer. This will like open up and clear all filters so that you can actually search and have a label printed for them, if anything, of one of the defaults instead of, there's 4 different types of labels that are going to be utilized in the system. So how do I get to the check-in area? The best way that I know is to actually go through the service, go specifically to the service and not just checking directly on check-in. Otherwise, you run the risk of logging into the wrong service or time and having a bunch of people checked in for a service that they didn't attend. So at this point, I'm going to actually escape here, and I'm going to show you this on the dashboard. So this is our like fake website for the West Side because I'm in LA, and I'm going to show you, this is what you would normally see when you log in. So if I wanted to go to check-in, I would be really tempted to just click on this button and go to it, but that doesn't guarantee that I'm at the right service. So I really suggest you go to services, upcoming services, and then click on whatever the service is that you're wanting to use it for. And there's this lovely check-in tab. So if you have volunteers helping you, which we highly encourage you to do, this is actually what they're going to see. They can make sure that they're on the right mode for children, volunteers, or all people. And then they, depending on what you've enabled in the settings, they can search by last name, by phone number, or by a security code. So if you'll watch, I'm going to search my own name. There I am. And I'm going to check myself in, even though I'm not a child. But I can assign a class. In this case, I'm going to show you a little bit about this later. It's only letting me assign to a class that has my demographic. So I'm going to explain that a little bit more. But it's really important that you're not just assigning to like a no room nebulous space, which is an option if you don't have your rooms set up. So that way you really have a true accurate idea of where these kids are on a service plan, and parents are wondering, can I, check in with my kid about something? You know where they are. So if I check them in, then I can actually set it up to print all labels automatically upon finishing, or I can set it to be manual where I would have to actually print all the labels by clicking this button. So that's just your preference. If you find that there's a lot of waste happening for the automatic, you can have it more in your control for manual. So when the time comes out, then they can just check out, confirm, and that person is removed. So this is really best for volunteers using the check-in system. It's going to look a little bit different if you decide to do the self check-in button here. So this is if you want to have kiosks up where parents are coming up on their own, they're members, they know what they're doing. And if you want to start self check-in, you can have this regular keyboard here. You can set up a style of what it looks like. I'll show a little more on that later. But this is kind of what I put together as like a typical self check-in screen. So, and that's actually, that picture is a great example of what one of our churches has done, where they have their printer right there. They have a barcode scanner that's completely optional. And then they have a touchscreen computer for parents to actually type in the last name, phone number, or security code. So the same thing happens if they start searching by last name. Then here it is. I can print my label, I can finish. If at any point a parent tries to go away from this screen, I'm going to finish right here. If they try to go away from this screen with this little like backdoor button, you're actually going to be able to prevent them from navigating away from that page, just so parents don't like wander into the rest of the database, right? So it will give them this login. If they have a login, they might want to use it, but pretty much parents know, oh wait, I'm probably leaving this area, I should probably not press that button. So that's really useful for making sure that the screen stays there and it doesn't have to be constantly checked to be in the right area. So let me go back to my slides and make sure I covered everything that is important for you guys to know. So I showed you how to get to the check-in area the best way. Oh, this is really important. So volunteers will be needed regardless of whether you use self check-in or volunteer assisted check-in. Why? Because if you have new people, which I know as church people, we're always hoping to have guests and new people, you're going to have to enter them into the database that first time so that they can have their information printed on the label for their child, and that you can track who's picking them up and whatnot. So volunteers will be needed regardless of whether you have them just helping new people or if you have them helping everyone check in. So anyone who is given access permission to check in will have the ability to add people at the top of the screen who are not already in the system. So that's already built in to the check-in access permissions. So it's really useful too. Also, if like say you want to be aware of any child's dietary needs or allergies, if you have a new guest that has a kid that has several allergies, they can enter all that information in so long as you have set up that custom field in the profile. Any field that is in the profile can be added to the label right there on the spot. So that way that sticker, maybe we put it on the back so they can't rip it off, and every volunteer that's helping that child can be aware of any snacks or things that they're giving the kid that could be harmful if they don't have knowledge of the allergies. So that's kind of just the volunteer side of things. Let me make sure I covered everything for self check-in. So again, they can search by a few different things. You can limit that to just last name or phone number or security code if you so choose. And I already mentioned it's password protected. And this is, again, I'm going to harp on this. It's not usable for new guests. They do need to be entered into the system before they can be checked in. So, and you're going to want that new person to have a volunteer greeting them and making them feel welcome and sure of what they're doing anyway. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to quick check-in. Quick check-in is a special mode if you want to use a barcode, and it is designed to be the quickest way to check in. You will have to invest in a quality scanner because you definitely don't want a bad scanner kind of breaking or taking a really long time to read to read it. The whole idea is that it's quick. So you'd have to invest in a barcode scanner and also just a series of barcodes to hand out to your parents ahead of time so that they would bring that with them to check in their kid. And you would also have to enter that security code ahead of time into their profile. So there's a lot of like back work that can be done to make it quicker in the moment. But this is completely optional. And if you wanted to use a barcode scanner, you would just pretend you were going to self check-in like I showed you a few minutes ago. And instead of having it as the native keyboard, you would have quick barcode scanner and then plug it in, and it should, once you hit continue, should be ready to rock and roll. So setting up.
So
Sure.
sorry. Didn't mean to interrupt you, Sabrina. I just
Yeah.
wanted to mention really quickly for all of our people, it's totally great having you guys ask questions in the chat, but it's actually a little bit more difficult for us to respond directly to you that way. So if you wouldn't mind just utilizing the Q&A area, that way myself and Lachlan can monitor those and actually do immediate responses directly to you guys instead of having all of those different queries kind of line up. No problem at all. Just wanted to make sure I mention it to everybody. Not an issue. We definitely should have mentioned this a little bit earlier. So I'm so sorry about that. So you guys can go ahead and utilize that moving forward. Okay. Thank you so much.
Great. All right, so I want to move on to setting up the check-in system. So it would be a dream if this could just get plugged in, you have your account and just get started, but there's actually several things that would need to be in place before you can really utilize the check-in system to its full capacity. So first of all, I want to start with what equipment do you need? We have some great articles that list this exact information. Right now we work with Dymo label writer printers, and you can see there's a few different models there. The 400, just take note, it does take twice as long as the 450 model. So if that is a price difference, that's just something to take into consideration for sure. And then we also have several different label size options, and those are actually in the settings area. You can always check, am I buying a Dymo label that is going to fit one of the settings that we have in the system? I would also encourage that you get the brand Dymo label writer. I have, or the labels for that brand are a lot more reliable. And I've had some customers report and support that some of the off-brand ones won't really print as like consistently as the Dymo labels. So all of those things I just want to throw out there for when you go to purchase things. So the next thing is the software. Again, we actually have an article for this, and it actually has links in there for you to just easy access, go in, make sure you have all your software uploaded to your computer. And this is not any extra cost. The only costs are the actual physical products with the printer and the labels. And then these softwares would be things that you go ahead and do on your computer for free on their website. So keep in mind, you do need to have a Mac or Windows, and I don't know about you, but I don't know many other people who don't have one of those two things. So it works with most computers. The next thing I get asked a lot is, can we use mobile devices? Yes. So a computer, though, has to be present at the check-in site. And that computer could be a little laptop that's out of sight. It doesn't have to be accessible to members at all. It just needs to be in range of the printer and the mobile device. So the reason we need that is because in our system, we've set it up for you to create print stations. So print stations are something you would set up in the settings, and I'll kind of give you guys a glance in a few minutes of what the settings look like. There's actually a lot of things that you can choose and make options for your church that are going to work the best for you. But in the settings, you would set up print stations for a mobile device to communicate with the computer, who then sends that little request to the printer. So when you go to check-in, you'll just start print station, and then it'll have you select the printer that you want to use. And then bam, you're back where you're using a computer like normal. So we recommend no more than one printer for no more than 3 kiosks, because you don't really want to have a bunch of wait time if you have lots of families that are checking in at once. If you have all those mobile devices going to one printer, it definitely could slow things down and cause kind of a traffic jam and getting into the service. So that is our recommendation: no more than one printer for 3, or no more than 3 kiosks for one printer. So, okay, so once we have our technology, once we have made the choice if we're going to use mobile devices or computer, then we have to look at the database itself. So what needs to be added beforehand? As many people as possible. I mentioned before that you can check in guests, but the less people that you're having to like enter in, on the spot, the better. The smoother it's going to go, the quicker it is that parents are going to be able to drop their kids off and then mosey on over to the coffee and service and whatever else you have planned for them that day. So make sure that you've uploaded as many people that you know of in your congregation as possible to the database. This is super easy with a CSV file usually. And then the other thing that you'll want to make sure you've added are demographics. And you might also want to make sure you've enabled something called demographic progression. I'm going to go there in just a second. But a couple other things you might want to add is date of birth for kids, school grades, anything that's going to allow you to track what area of check-in. If you have multiple rooms that are for different ages, you want to have that information in the system beforehand. So it's much easier to kind of designate where's their space. Are we having babies and school kids in the same room? Most likely not, unless you're kind of limited on space, which churches pop up anywhere. I know that does happen. But if you do have multiple rooms for your check-in, it's really important for you to have demographics assigned to your kids so that assigning them to rooms is really easy. So moving on to demographic progression. I'm just going to cough 1 second. So sorry. So demographic progression, what is this and what can it do? So if it comes that time of the year where the school year's ended, the summer's passed, and you're about to have a whole new bunch of kids move up in their developmental stage, their grade, their age, do you have to go in there and like actually update all their grades and all of their, profiles? The answer is no. So this is exactly what demographic progression is for. You can set it to where you're tracking kids by either age, grade, or if you have some kind of special developmental milestone that you're tracking them by, you can put in those demographics custom to what you need. But you want to go ahead and set it up to where maybe if you're tracking grades, you can actually go in and pick the day that you want it to update all the kids' grades. And so hopefully you have a whole lot less things to change, like, you know, God forbid some kid doesn't move up in a grade. It happens, right? That reduces how much you have to change on your end, like a ton. So you can pick the day, like I said, that you want it to automatically happen. And then it does, again, require you to assign the initial demographics to the child in your profile. And you can do that before you even upload to the database, with your CSV having a demographic, comma separated field, so that it updates that when you upload it. So I'm actually going to go one more slide, and then I'll kind of jump back to the database so I can show you this a little bit.
Hey, Sabrina,
Sure.
one quick second. So sorry to interrupt you. We had a good question from Elaine just asking about why are demographics required for this process. I don't know if you can give any further insight into that, just some of the reasons that is utilized with the check-in system.
Well, it's required is actually maybe not the accurate word, I would say, because you can check in people without demographics, without rooms and all that stuff. It's just if you have one big room for check-in, sure, like that's great. But if you want parents to be able to know, okay, what room is my kid in? Like, where are they? It can be really helpful. Most churches separate them by demographic. So that way, when you go to check them in and it has an option for room, it'll automatically like let you know what room they should go to, because you've assigned demographics to that room, and you also have it in a profile that it's just going to know, oh, this kid should go here, right? So it's not a requirement so much as it is an ease of use, right? If you set it up for him.
That's great.
And I would say every church is set up so differently, and you know how your kids is, what you're classifying people. So as you guys onboard and use this, and even if you already are, you know, support can help you kind of determine the best way to do things, or your coach, if you have one, can help you do those things. So it's definitely a valid question, because we all use different terms and ways of setting up our ministry. So there is some flexibility there.
Absolutely. Right. Okay, great. Thanks so much. Appreciate it, guys.
Yeah, no problem. So on rooms, if you have multiple rooms being used for your kids' ministry, you're going to want to set up this according to what you have. So that way parents are like, hey, I got to check out early. Like, where's my kid at? Your volunteers have an ease of knowing where the kids are in the check-in system based on what you've set up. So for, like I mentioned, you can assign specific demographics to each room. And then I'm going to show you what I was talking about just now. So first of all, if I go to settings and I want to set up my demographics, I just want to show you like how customizable this is. So in this, demo account, we've kind of done some basic terms here, but you can make these terms like whatever you want, and then just like add a demographic all your own if you're calling them something completely different. When I go into children though, I want to make sure that I have all these sub-demographics. So I kind of added some typical ones that you might use. This is, again, completely customizable based on what fits your community. So I have like babies set up. I added toddlers. I probably would not have 2 babies and infants, just kind of make it to where it's going to be the less confusing to people. And then school kids, I can even break this down even further if I want into like all the different grades. But I can make it age-based, grade-based, or development-based. So for grade-based, I would basically give a range of what this is. Am I going to go all the way to 12th grade, or do I want to track kids up until 8th grade, and then they go to like youth group or something, or like a different demographic? So I'll just do to like 6th grade. And then I could actually change all this to grade-based. And babies are not necessarily going to be in a grade, so you would want to just kind of keep it nursery, preschool. But then if I want to keep that there for my little ones, I'm probably just going to get rid of that one right now. Okay. And then for school kids, if I don't break this down anymore, I might just keep it as kindergarten through 6th grade, right? So if I save that, and then I go over to my rooms, so check-in, rooms, I went ahead and beforehand added a few rooms, but you can add as many rooms as you need by clicking this button. But I have, the way that we do it at C3LA is we have tinies, we have bigs, we have littles, and then we have like youth and adult, right? So tinies, if I open up that room, I can make sure it's active. I can decide what location, if multiple locations are going to use the same terms, or you can customize this per location. But I want to make sure on my tinies are just my babies, right? That any kid that has been designated that in their profile is going to be automatically assigned to that area. But then if I go to my littles, they are going to be the toddlers, right? And so that way, when I go and I search for that child, it's going to automatically put them in the right room based on what is assigned in their profile. So when I say assigned in the profile, let me just pull up my own and I'll show you what I mean there. So there's lots of information that you can add about your members, but there is going to be a demographics area that I've marked myself as an adult, but this is kind of where you would go and like designate this. And there is a mass manage feature. If you know, oh, all these kids are second graders, I'm going to go and check all those kids and then change them all at the same time. So that can be quickened a little bit if you have a lot to do at once. So let's go back to the slides here. And that is setting up the room. Okay, so the settings, I'm not going to go into like every single one because there are a lot for you to choose from, but I want to give you an overview of what is customizable. So there's 3 different tabs when you go to the check-in settings, and this is the first one. The check-in tab is where you can set some defaults, like do I want that little check-in mode to always be on children only? Do I want to, am I going to use it most for volunteers? Whatever you would like. You can decide to hide or show your people categories, like if you're designating people as members, guests, whatever terms you're using, you can maybe hide those just to avoid questions, like if parents see like, wait, why does it say I'm a guest and I've been coming for, you know, like just kind of avoid that altogether if you want. If it's helpful, then show it. So the other thing that you can do in this area is have text messages sent to parents, like in the middle of a service, you know, on the unfortunate occasion that you need some help with the parent to come out of the service to help with their child, you can have a customized text message for that occasion, and it can have placeholders in it that personalize it to like your kid's name and what room they're in. It'll like plug in that information so the parent knows exactly where to go. And then there are lots of different customizable security code features. So you can pick if you're just using letters, numbers, or both, whether or not you want families to have all one security code or one security code per kid. There's a lot of different things you can do here. And then obviously if you're using barcode scanners, that's going to be its own kind of security code there. And then there's a few other settings just for self check-in, like how you want them to be able to search their kid, whether it's just by name, whether it's by their security code, whatever you want. So the next tab is the label printing tab. So not every church prints labels, but if you find this to be a helpful feature, there's a whole tab designated to this. And this is where you decide what labels get printed. If you want just children's labels to get printed, you can turn off parent labels. If you want a parent to have a label per kid where it's just like, bam, on that diaper bag or something, you know, or if you want one label with the parent having all the kids' information, if they have multiple children, that's an option as well. This is also where you want to decide if you want automatic printing when they click finish, or if you want manual printing by actually having to click the print button for labels. You can design up to 4 different label templates. One of them is for children. One of them is for parents. The third one is for volunteers. And the fourth one is that all people label, just in case like I'm not finding them as a child, parent, volunteer in the system at all, you have like that default all people label that will get printed if you don't have any other options, right? And then this is also where you add those print stations. If you would like to do multiple printers, mobile devices, that's the tab that you want to go to. And then the last tab is the styles tab. So when I showed you guys the self check-in a little earlier where you have little kiosks set up, parents to walk up, search your kid, do it all themselves. You can design that depending on what kind of graphics your church has. If you want kind of a more clean feel, like on the left, that's just the basic. I picked a couple colors and it's just more plain. If you would like that kind of clean look, or if you have those specific graphics, one of our churches uses this check-in setup here where they've got their like friendly faces and they've got their little logo up in the top left corner. That is customizable both with colors and with uploading images. So before I wrap up this section, I'll just show you what I'm talking about. I'm not going to spend too much time here, but if you go to settings and check in, I can find it. There it is. So there's those 3 tabs that I just spoke on, and this is where the defaults, this is the hide or show people category. These are the templates for the text messages for parents, and there's again some placeholders that can really make that customizable to the parent's child, what room that child's in. You can put in some things that it will change depending on who you're talking to. These are those security code features you can look at. Session codes, that's like an added layer of security if you want parents to be able to search with their known code, but then use a different code so it can't kind of be like visible to other people. Just for added security, that's something you can enable. And then these are those self check-in options on what they can be searched by, whether or not you want security codes displayed on the screen. Like if somebody's behind them, you may not want them to be able to just glance over and see what their security code is if that's the way you're checking kids out. So you can have that hidden. And then just a couple other options for you to decide for self check-in. Here is the label printing tab where you decide automatic versus manual, which labels are printed. Here's where you can change the size of the label. And then these are those 4 different label templates. So if I want anything from the profile on a label, if it is a field in the profile, it can be added. So you can see these are all the fields that you might have information from the profile in the database. And you can put that on there, whether it's their department for volunteers, or age, or if you have custom fields added, like toward the bottom. These are all things I've added as a custom field that are not there by default, but if I add it, I can put it on the label. So that's really useful. And then these are where you can put logos on the label. Keep in mind, it's very tiny and it needs to be really simple so that your graphics don't like get all muddy on this teeny tiny label. So self check-in, that's just a couple other options for self check-in. And this is where you can add your print stations. Like if I'm not sure what BERT is, I'm just gonna get rid of that. But I have like an iPad print station, or if I'm using mobile phones, you can kind of make sure you're picking the right one by giving it the name you need. And then this is where you can pick styles. I've got like 3 different ones here that I was messing with. That plain one I showed you. So this is where you can add a style, picking background text, color, a logo, some images. There's not a ton of graphic choices here, but there's a few that you can make it your own. So going back to our presentation, I think I'm done with the backend stuff. Yeah. So we are wrapping it up with what can be done with after check-in. After you've set it up, after you've used it, I want to go over a few of our useful reports that you might be interested in using in the future. So the first is the built-in reports. We have 3 of these that are built in for check-in. And these descriptions are straight out of what is on our database. So you don't have to remember like, what's an absentee? What's that one? It has a little description for you there. So the first one is going to be absentees. If I just want to see who's missing, well, I can search a time frame and I can pull up that report really easily once I enter in those dates. The second one is overall check-in attendance, and it shows overall check-ins within a defined period of time. It has rooms, the number of check-ins, average capacity. Like if you want, that's something else you can assign in your rooms is the capacity. How many kids can be assigned to this room. And as you're checking them in, you can see if you're hitting that. But if you want to kind of get a report like, whoa, we are getting a bunch of kids in toddlers, maybe we should switch rooms. This is a report that you can see the trends of that and maybe make adjustments after that. The third one is just room attendance. If you want to have a list of who is checked in, maybe just for one day, like in real time, okay, looks like check-in's wrapping up. Let's run that room attendance report, and it'll show all the different rooms and who is there, how many kids are there as well. So that is built in. You have some custom options. So I already mentioned you can add custom fields to profiles, and then you can actually report on those fields if you want to do a search feature for something like how many kids have allergies, or another thing that I've heard used a lot is adding a custom field if background checks are about to expire, you putting that date in there, and you can actually schedule a report to come to you like every month with anybody who's getting close to their background check being expired. So that way you can stay on top of keeping your volunteers, checked up on, making sure you have the best volunteers that are in compliance if there's any kind of state or government regulations you have to adhere to. So the second thing here, create a standard report. If that's kind of what I was just mentioning, to routinely have it tell you certain things, you can schedule those reports to come to you. So the last one is comprehensive reports. So in a nutshell, a comprehensive report, it allows you to group multiple reports into one with like page breaks. So the room attendance one, you can have it check on multiple rooms, but that report will actually be all on one spreadsheet. If I want a comprehensive report, I could actually use that room attendance report to make a Sunday morning master list where each room is on a separate page with page breaks. And then maybe after everybody's checked in, it's printed out and sent to all the rooms so the volunteers have a roster for, check, do I have all my kids? Yes. And as a former teacher, I can tell you that would be so helpful to make sure I'm keeping track of all these kids and they're not wandering off or hiding somewhere. So that is a pretty common use for a comprehensive report, but again, completely customizable. So that about wraps it up with the overview of check-in, and I'd love to answer your questions along with Lockie's help if I don't know it. So
awesome. Thank you so much, Sabrina. That was amazing. Love all the insight, all of the training, such great information. So I do have, let me just pull up my handy dandy list. We had one of our customers write in and said, for self-check-in kiosk, can you talk about what users should be created or used to log kids in and out? Does that make sense, Sabrina, or do you need more further context with that?
So they're asking what needs to be used to check in for like self check-in?
Yeah, for self check-in kiosk. They said they don't want to use room leaders' names, and then the parents could have greater access to the CHMS as well. So maybe some recommendations for that if you have those.
So if they're doing self check-in, the parent's going to come up to the kiosk and they're going to be able to search by last name, by their phone number, and by security code if you have that assigned in the profile to pull up their kid. And then you can give whatever names you want to the rooms. Like if you want to have room leaders, like people's names in whose room it is, that's completely up to you. Or if you just want to call it by its age group. So it really depends on if you want parents to know who their room leader is, or if you want them to just know what room it's the toddler room, or it's the fifth grade room, or whatever room name that you want to give them. But beyond that, they're not really gonna see much more beyond that other than their own kids' information and then what room they're going to.
Okay. Perfect. And if you have any follow-up questions for the person who wrote that in, you can always email us at support@tithe.ly and we can give you further insight into that. But hopefully that gives you some good overview information. So it looks like we're getting a couple of other ones. So Clint, he wants to know, could you go through the best practices for setup for check-in when you have 2 services and kids programming during both hours? So some context, kids need to check into either both hours or one, depending upon when the families come in during that Sunday morning. So any insight into that?
Yeah, so when you go to the service and you pick which service you're gonna get to for that check-in tab, if that service happens to have multiple times assigned to it, it's actually going to ask you, okay, which time did you want to start check-in for? And so when you click on the tab for check-in, it'll be like 8:30, 10 a.m., 12, and you pick the one that you want to check in. And you can leave them checked in if you want. If parents are staying for multiple service, like they're sitting in on one, serving at one, you can just have kids stay in there, or you can have your volunteers in between, kind of move everybody over to the second time. It would require them to be checked out and checked back in. But yeah, that's as far as I know, unless Lachlan has another thing to add to that, that's how you could do that.
Perfect. That sounds great. Clint, if you have any further questions as well about that, like I just said, make sure you just email us directly and we can hopefully give any further context or specifics for that. Elaine would love to know, what is your best recommendation for creating new profiles for new kids? So right now they have a lot of security and it's put on the labels and it takes a really long time to put that information into the system. Is there any information or easier way to do that?
So I can show you what currently happens. So if I go to the service and I click on an upcoming one and check in. So this is like what your volunteers are seeing, right? So if they want to add a person or a family, they would just click on this button. And then if it's a new person, you can add it to an existing family, right? Because on the profiles, there's a family tab where you can link people together, whether they're spouses, parent, child, and sister, brother, whatever. So if you want to add a new family, then this is what you would pull up. And at the very least, you want to have their name, their phone number, what their kids' information is, like the name of the child, probably the date of birth. If you have any special fields you want to enter in, you can add that for child, how many different kids. And I think there is a setting to show what is here. Lachlan, can you speak to whether or not the allergy field, a custom field, can be added to this area?
Yeah, absolutely. So that would be done in the people categories layouts. Mm-hmm. If you want to go through that, Sabrina.
So if I go to people categories, and then it would be congregation or whatever you have.
Correct.
And is this layout, this is for the profile that users see, right? With this edit tab, where do they do that?
Yep, so that's the admin tab. So what we want to do is you can go into the custom, the allergies field there at the bottom, Sabrina, mm-hmm. and just scroll up a little bit to where it has allergies listed in the layout.
Ah, okay.
Yep. And then you can click on that little pencil symbol and you'll see there that there's the option to make this field editable via the check-in system.
Okay, great. So yeah, you can decide which pieces of information are really important for you to gather upon having a new child or a new person check in. So if I go back to that. Then add new person and new family. Where would this then be editable, Lachlan, when they add them?
Sorry, was that the allergies field that you're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, usually it would just be in the add person. It's not in the add new family section. So
okay.
It would be for individuals, yeah.
Okay.
And sorry.
Over here, add person.
And yeah, correct. And in the check-in area specifically, you would need to search for the person's name as an existing person, and you can edit that within the check-in area. So you can click on that person's name there, mm-hmm. and it'll come up.
Okay. That's what I needed. Yes. So then we can have allergies added once that person has been added to the system, and then once you've searched them to bring up their name to click on that.
Perfect. And then let's go ahead. We're going to take just one more question because we're getting close to the end of our time today. Lisa wanted to know, can you import demographics of children to the system from CSV files? That is a great question. I'm not sure. So perfect.
Yeah. So I think as long as you have those comma separated values, like formatted correctly, that is something that you can import. And Lachlan, can you confirm that?
Yeah, absolutely. As long as those comma separated values are done correctly in the spreadsheet, you can definitely import those demographics.
Perfect.
And just to speak to that too a little bit further, we actually have an entire data migration team. So if you guys ever have any specific questions about that, you can email us at support@tithe.ly, and then we can loop in our data migration team as well. And they can assist if you need help formatting or getting that information readily available. Let's see. All right, it looks like we have a little bit of a longer question. I'm so sorry, Clint, we're gonna have to end for the day, but if you wouldn't mind, Lachlan, can you take a look at that really quick and try to respond to that to him personally? And if needed, Clint, you can always just email us directly. We'll be happy to follow up with that. So let's go ahead and move on just to the next slide really quickly. So I just wanted to give you guys some insight into what kind of next is going to be happening. So like I said, throughout this entire webinar, we are always happy to answer any specific questions in our support department. And if you have coaches directly with your account as well, please reach out to your coach. They're working so hard at trying to get your setup as effective as possible. So you can always email us directly at support@tithe.ly. This is a great thing to do also if you have any of those feedback requests. So we'll have to loop in our product manager, whose name is Stuart. He's really, really great, and he's going to be able to look at all of those requests and see if that is possible to add into the system. We're also going to be sending out a whole email of resources in the next couple of days, hopefully by end of today. That'll include the slides from today. That'll include some great resources to our help center. And then we're also going to, on that, include a form where you can also add feedback requests as well. So just a great way for you guys to follow up with us on that. And go ahead, Sharon.
Yeah, so thank you guys so much for coming today. We really just, these questions that are even come up are just brilliant. And we really want to make sure that as we are developing products, we are also hearing what you have to say and the questions and specifics that you have. So just thank you so much. And obviously the team did great. Sabrina was awesome. We do want to let you know that we will be sending out links to our next webinars. The next one is going to be about our giving side of things, so dashboard reporting and CHMS integration, how that works together. We know that's a big topic, so we're really excited to tackle that with you. And then in December, we're going to go back to CHMS and talk about flows and forms. So we have so much good content. We will be doing a survey, like Addie said, to also hear what you want to talk about, so that will help us inform future sessions. And then I think the next slide, we just talk about on-site training. So we just want to mention this is something that we are providing. We're in beta phase. We're excited to be launching this to our customers. Also, it's very dependent on where you live. So please really just email me. We can talk through all details. And if that's something that you think would work for your church and maybe your staff and leadership team, we'd be happy to talk that through with you. So anyways, thank you guys so much for being here. We just are so happy we did our first Tithely University, excited to do more. And we just love you all as customers. So please drop us a line, reply to our emails. We'd love to hear from you more, and have a great day.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much. Have a wonderful rest of your day. We'll all be talking soon. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.